Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. My name is Shai Schmelzer. Also on the line are Laura and Blaine. We're all from the Oracle Cloud Development Tools Product Management team, and today we're going to give you an introduction to Oracle Visual Builder. During the session, I'm going to be doing talking and demoing, but if you have questions at any point of time, we have a little Q&A panel in the Zoom. You can just post your questions there. Laura and Blaine would be happy to answer your questions. We're also going to try and take some questions towards the end if time allows. In any case, this is kind of a rerun of a session we did at Oracle Cloud World a month ago, and it gives you an introduction to what is Oracle Visual Builder, what makes it unique, why you might want to consider using it, and that's about it. So let's get started. So what is Oracle Visual Builder? Oracle Visual Builder is a cloud platform that allows you to rapidly create and host enterprise application using a visual development environment. So basically, this is both a development tool that allows you to build the application, and it's also a cloud managed hosted service that allows you to host the application and provide your customers with the platform that they access in order to work with your application. Okay. Oracle Visual Builder is also the development tool that Oracle uses to build our own Oracle Fusion Cloud applications. If you're not familiar, Fusion Cloud applications, that's basically the set of HCM, CX, ERP, SCM modules that Oracle is offering as an off-the-shelf set of application to manage organization. The new modules in those Fusion applications are all being developed using Visual Builder as the development tool for the user interface, the Redwood user interface of those applications. Beyond that, Visual Builder, of course, is used by thousands of customers around the world to build their own applications for their own organizations and their own needs. So, what do you get with Visual Builder? What is in it? When you spin up an instance of a Visual Builder cloud service, what you get is basically this box that you see here in the middle. At the top, you have a visual development environment. That's basically a visual interface that allows you to create the application and develop the application. That's what developers are going to use to create the application. Beyond that, you get a server, and on this server, we have app hosting, basically a web server that serves the end application to the end users. We also have a built-in database that allow you to store your own data in custom tables that you create, and also create business objects on top of that data. Those business objects basically expose the data from the tables as REST services, and they also implement a bunch of business logic on those tables and data. So things like validations or things like handling what happens when you create a new record or update a record, things like that, are all encapsulated in reusable business objects. By the way, those business objects can be used from your Visual Builder user interface, but they can also be used by other applications outside of Visual Builder, by other systems as well. They expose a public secure REST API that you can use to access the data. And the fourth part that you get inside our server is a REST proxy service, which allows you to securely access REST data points across the internet, whether those are part of Oracle Fusion apps, whether they are coming from Oracle Integration Cloud, or whether they are just any random REST service out there. The REST proxy resolves things like how do you do authentication with various protocols to those REST endpoints, also how you manage cross interactions going through the server instead of from your browser. And all of this is coming as a little box basically that you spin up, and this is a managed service from Oracle, which means we take care of all the aspects of keeping the software up to date, keeping it running, doing backups, doing upgrades to the infrastructure, doing upgrades to the software parts. Everything is managed by us. You control how many CPUs are allocated to that, but beyond that, we manage everything for you on that server. All right? So that's basically what's inside Visual Builder. Now, the main point of Visual Builder is making you, a developer, more productive. And the way that we make you more productive is by giving you a visual interface to do UI development. We're giving you a visual approach to also create your business logic part. So not just the user interface, but also the logic, the programming that goes into your application, the code that you write. We give you a visual interface to develop your code, basically. We make it very easy for you to interact with any REST backend. Again, walking you through dialogues and wizards that help you define the connection to the REST interface and getting the data out of it or getting data into it. We also make it very easy in a declarative way to create your own data objects, tables in database, relationships, and things like that. And of course, we then manage everything for you from the hosting perspective with the managed service. So let's dig a little deeper into each one of those. Okay? So when we say visual development, you can actually see it on the right side happening right now, but we'll do a full demo later on. The idea is that when you design your application, you get a real view of how the application looks like, including the actual data in the design. And then on the left side, you have a bunch of components that you drag and drop and put them on the page. We have over 150 user interface components that you can use to design your application. Those are the Oracle JET components. JET stands for the JavaScript Extension Toolkit. It's basically a set of user interface components that create HTML. The JET components themselves, they are open source. You can use them also outside of Visual Builder. You can use them just with the code editor, but we give you a visual way to build those JET-based applications. Okay. Beyond that, we add a bunch of Redwood components, which we'll talk about later on. You use drag and drop to take the components, put them on a page, and visually design how the page looks like. You have an interactive structure pane on the bottom left. You have a property inspector that allows you to set properties for the component to control how they behave. We have events driven by those components. And while you're designing your application, you can also get a multi-device and multi-role preview. So you can see how your page is going to look on a big screen, on a small device, how it's going to look with different roles of users accessing the application, how a manager is going to see it versus an employee, if you have, for example, those scenarios. When you do all of this visual development, what you're actually creating is HTML code. And if you'll notice that at the top right there, there's a little button said called code. And when you click on it, you can actually switch to see the code view of the application you built. The code is pure HTML code. And you can actually also work at the HTML code. You can modify the HTML code directly, and it would be reflected in the visual view, in the structure pane, in the property inspector. They are all connected. What we're doing here is we're not just generating code. We're actually creating code and letting you modify code either visually or directly in code. So that was the user interface. We do the same thing when you're creating business logic, when you're adding the unique capabilities of logic and programming into your application. So for example, if you need to build a validation for a field and you need to do an if then else, and you need to call some REST service to get some data, and you need to then loop over the data and check something, we give you this structure that you can see on the right side to create code blocks. Okay, the code blocks are actually creating JavaScript code. Okay. On the left side, you'll see a list of declarative actions that you can drag and drop. Those are everything from structural things like doing loops and if then else, or running things in parallel, then to things like actually invoking a REST service, calling some JavaScript component, invoking some method of a UI component, firing notification, getting location, accessing device capabilities. All of those type of things are declarative actions that you can drag and drop into the design time. Okay. Like before, you have a structure pane, you have a property inspector where you can set the properties of those actions. And at the end of the day, you can always switch the code view. And in the code view, you'll see pure JavaScript code that you can, again, code directly in the code editor as well. And just to clarify, our code editor has all the capabilities of code insight and error highlighting and formatting and code collapsing and stuff like that, like you would expect from a powerful code editor. So this is how you build your UI and how you build your business logic. Your data for the application is going to come from REST APIs. Okay, and it can be any REST API. We actually include a service catalog that gives you access to all the REST services exposed by the Oracle Fusion applications. Again, HCM, ERP, SCM, CX, all of those expose REST services as the official authorized way to access their data, and they are built into our service catalog. You can access and just pick up endpoints from there. We also give you a service catalog that maps to the Oracle Integration Cloud. Oracle Integration Cloud allows you to create connection to a multiple set of backends. They have adapters for a huge set of systems out there, and you can just access those pieces of data directly from our service catalog. Beyond that, you can use any Open API or Swagger-based specification for a REST service. We'll know how to parse the specification and create the REST endpoints that map to those operations. Open API and Swaggers are, again, industry standards of how you define REST API and what they do. And the last option that you can see on the screen over there is defined by endpoint. If you don't have a REST Swagger, if it's not in one of our catalogs, you can just bring us the endpoint to a REST service. We'll know how to work with it. We'll allow you to define multiple authentication options of how you access the REST service. We'll parse the structure of the data that is being sent and being received from this REST service, and allow you to define and test all of this inside Visual Builder. Then we'll be able to very easily connect your user interface to the REST endpoint you just defined. And we also support easy backend switching. So when you're developing, it's likely that you're accessing a certain set of servers. When you go into production, you might be accessing the production servers. So you would want to switch the servers that you're using, and we have the full mechanisms of switching services through the lifecycle, built as what we call application profiles and backends inside Visual Builder. The last point is about declarative data objects. So maybe the data that you want to have in your application is not something that already exists in another system, but rather new tables and new data that you need to collect. We make it very easy to create your own business objects, your own tables in an Oracle database in the cloud. We can also, by the way, map to an existing Oracle database in the cloud. So if you have your data already in an Oracle database, we can point to that database and create business objects on top of your existing tables. If you don't have tables, we can create those for you. We can import data from CSV and Excel files to create business objects based on it, making it very easy to take spreadsheets that have data that you need to track in a better way and create web applications and mobile applications on top of them. We then allow you to create declarative business logic on top of this data. Again, all sorts of validations or operations you need to do when data changes. And we create a complete REST API on top of those business objects, allowing the Visual Builder user interface or any other interface to access the business objects. We also automate the whole aspects of the life cycle management of your business object. So again, managing an instance for development, test, and production, and taking your business object through this life cycle through versioning. So for example, you went into production and then you figured out, hey, I need to modify a table. We know how to do the modification on the existing table without having to drop all the data that is in there. All right, so that was the basics. What I wanted to show you now is a quick development demo of how you would go about building an application. And then we're going to talk about some of the more advanced capabilities of Visual Builder. So let's switch over into our development environment over here, and I'll just build a new application right now. So we'll start with a new application. This would be the VB intro application. Okay. And again, you can choose a template for your application. We have all sorts of templates. I'm going to use the Redwood Starter application template. And that's one of the templates that Oracle provide. Now, if you're not familiar with Redwood, we'll talk about it later on. But Redwood is basically the design philosophy and design artifacts that Oracle uses to build our own Fusion applications. We give you the same set of design patterns, template components, patterns, so you can build your own application. And that's what I just did here. I said, hey, I want to use the same things that Oracle is using for their application to create my application. And then when you create an application, you're taking into our welcome page. You can create a responsive web app that can also be deployed as a progressive web application, PWA, on mobile devices. You can connect to services. You can create your own business object, work with components and processes. Over here, we have our web application, and we created an initial page for you, what we called main start. And this page does just have this code in here. It's basically just a welcome. Over here, you have the structure pane, which allows you very easily to go over and remove whatever is on the page. And then you can start to pick up component from the list of components that we have here. And again, we have a huge list of components, everything that, including charts and visualization and messages and a bunch of other components that you can just drag and drop. Again, over 150 components are over there. I'm just going to take, for example, a heading and then a horizontal rule, for example, and then I can pick up, for example, a button. And this is how you basically go over and design your application. You just take things and you put them wherever you want, and then you can set their properties like that. Okay, so you can click on heading and say something else, for example. Okay, what you're actually doing here, okay, when you're dragging things over, is you're creating HTML code. Okay, so this is the HTML code. You have an H1. You can go over and you can change this in the code, and this would be reflected in the visual view. It's both connected. Okay, so this is how you go about laying out your page. Now, if you let me as a developer build your pages, it's not going to look nice because I'm not good at UI development, at UI design. This is why we have our UI designers that do this. Okay, so I'm going to undo this whole section in here. Okay, and instead, I'm going to select one of the templates that our UI designer created, and those are the Redwood templates. You can see there's 13 templates right now, and the list keeps growing. It's everything from how you do create an edit page to how you show collections of data to a bunch of other things, a welcome page. I'm going to start with a simple search page. Okay. Yeah, so let's do this. And then my page gets the look and feel that Oracle designed for a search page. Now, the template has a bunch of properties that I can set, for example, the title. So we're going to build a little movies application, which allows you to search our database of movies. Okay, and we can also set it to have a mixed background. And if you're familiar with the new look and feel of Fusion apps, this is exactly the same look and feel. You can see that in the template, they also allocated slots where I can drag and drop components to populate the slot. So in the search slot, it makes sense for me to pick up one of our search components and just drag and drop it over here. Okay, then I can tie this component because people are going to put data in it. I want to keep this data in a variable. So over here, I can create my little variable. We'll call it movie search, for example. Okay, it's a string variable. This is going to contain the data that people put into this field. Okay. Then over here, I want to show a list of movies. Okay, so now I need to get some data about movies. So one of the options is I can go over here to my business object and I can create a business object that stores information about movies. I actually have a spreadsheet that has information about movies. So I'm going to import this spreadsheet. Okay, that's XLX file. I'm going to upload it into Visual Builder. Okay. Visual Builder actually parses the Excel spreadsheet. It finds out there are two sheets in there, one for genres and one for movies. And it can show me which fields are in each one. I can then modify the type of fields. I can say whether they are required or not and stuff like that. And then when I click finish, what Visual Builder does is it takes the spreadsheet, creates tables in an Oracle database in the cloud, loads the data into those tables in the Oracle cloud, and then exposes those tables as a set of REST services for me to use. Right. So now I have a table in the database that has all this data that came from the Excel spreadsheet. It has this list of fields. I can also modify. I can add fields. Okay. For example, I can create a genre column in the movies and link it up to the genre table that I created, for example. Okay. So I can create relationship. I can add additional fields. I can also implement business rules on here, okay, triggers that would be done on an object level, on a field level, validations and stuff like that. And there's also a security aspect that I can set here for who can access my data. Right now, I'm just going to let anyone access the data. All of this data is exposed with a set of REST services here that allow me to access the data, do queries, sorting, stuff like that, pagination. All of this is built into our REST services, and also do all the CRUD operation to update, insert, and delete movies. Okay? So now I have my data in a table in an Oracle database. I can go back to my page, and I can go over to my data palette, and I can see the two tables I created over here. And I can drag the movies over into my page and drop it in various ways, as a table, as a list, as a create form, as an edit form, if I want to edit the details of a movie. In our case, we're going to create a little list of movies. Again, different templates that I can use for the list, or I can come up with my own layout. And I'm just going to show the title of the movie in the default slot. I'm going to take the poster, put it in the leading slot, and switch it to show up as an image because it's a poster. And then I'm going to take the vote average, put it as the metadata slot over here, and maybe we'll take also, let's see, the release date. Okay, when was this movie released? We'll put it over here. Okay. Next, I can also define a filter for the table. Okay, and we have a nice visual editor for creating filters. So for example, if I want to have the title contain what is in my movie search variable, okay, that's my condition for filtering. This is how I do the condition. And again, you can do if, the end, or stuff like that. Let's click finish. And now we have the list of movies over here. We can do a little work on the UI. For example, this image right now is too small. So let's make it a little bigger like that. So we'll actually see the movie info in here. So one of the things to note here is the visual aspects of UI design. You can just click on stuff and directly modify it. For example, instead of showing the full release date with time and stuff like that, maybe what I want to do is just show the year. So I can do a substring JavaScript function to just extract the year out of the date. Okay, like that. Now, by the way, this is the design view. One of the other, and there's the code view, which actually shows me the HTML code, but there's also the live view. And in the live view, I can actually work with my application. So if I put MER, I get all the movies that have MER in their name. Okay. If I put, let's say BAR, I get Barbie, for example, as a movie. Okay. So I created the page, basically created the data objects, created the page, everything done declaratively over here. Okay. By the way, if I wanted this page to also allow me to rent the movie, I can add here a rent operation, and I'll have a button up here to allow me to rent, and then I can code the logic for this button. Okay. So what's next? I want to show you how to build business logic into your application. So for example, I want to do something when someone selects a movie from the list. So I can click on the list here, okay? And I can say what is going to happen in specific event list, okay? For example, what's going to happen when someone selects an item in the list? And this takes me into my code editor for business logic. And over here, again, I can do a bunch of things. I can say, hey, give me an if condition, okay? And the condition checks, for example, the row key that was passed into this section. And then go over and call a REST service, and then call a JavaScript function. And if the if condition is not done correctly, go over here and do an else and call something on a component in the page. And I can pick up a component in the page and do something on it. And this is how you build your business logic, okay? We have a bunch of declarative actions here, okay? If I need to run something in parallel after that, I can do a parallel run, okay? If I need to do a loop at some point, I can add a loop here. And this is how you create your business logic, again, in a visual declarative way. But, and by the way, you can also inject here something like, let's call some JavaScript code, okay? Let's say over here, okay? And then you can do something like console.log and put a message. Okay, like that. Now, when you're doing all of this visually here, if you switch to the code view, you would actually see JavaScript code with the if then else conditions, with everything else, right? So we can basically get code insight and code your way over here in JavaScript as well, okay? And that's important to understand, like what you're creating here visually is just JavaScript code. Same JavaScript that you would code otherwise in other places. You can also modify the code directly as we showed you. So again, like I don't want to do all of those operations here. So let's remove, again, this is our smart undo. I can see exactly what I undid here. And instead, all I need to do here is when someone selects a movie, I want to go to a page, I want to navigate to a page that shows me information about this movie. Okay, so I'm going to create a new page here. We'll call this page the info page. And we're going to use again another template like the horizontal foldout template to create this page. Okay. Now this template, it's also a pattern of how you go from a list into a specific item. What you usually pass in is the ID of the item that you're interested in. This would be the row key. This is the row index that we're passing in. You can pass in which page you came from. Our page is called main start, so we'll pass this as another parameter. And that's how I created my business logic. Okay, so now if I go back into my page designer and I click on live and I click on Guardians of the Galaxy, I would be taken into the next page, which is using our fold-out layout to design this page. And now all I need to do is basically say, hey, what do I want to show on this page? So I can again take the information from the movies object, bring it into this page. This time I'm going to create a detail form. Okay, and the detail form would show me information about the movie. And again, I can select what I want to show here, the vote average, the poster, the overview of the movie, maybe the language, and again, everything else that I want to show here, I can basically pick up and add to this page. Okay, and maybe we'll remove the poster, we'll use the backdrop instead. All right. Because I'm looking at a specific record here, there's a parameter, the row index that we passed in. That's the ID of the movie. I can pass it in and I would see information about the movie. And now indeed I see the Guardian of the Galaxy movie info in here. Okay. And then again, you can start to redesign your page. You can take the overview and move it to the side, to the next panel. Okay. There's a rating over here. Okay. Maybe instead of showing the rating as a number, it would be nice to use one of our gauge component. Sorry, like that. For example, the rating gauge. We can put it up here and set it to have 10 stars because our rating goes from 0 to 10 and hook it to the data coming from our vote average. Okay, so that's another way to show the rating in a way that is a little nicer than just a number. Okay, and again, you can change the color and all of those type of things in here. Okay. And maybe you want to show an image, right? So you can say, hey, I actually need to show an image here, and I can bring the image here to the top and set the image to come from the backdrop property of the movie, like that. Okay. So this is how you design things. And again, like the title over here, it would make sense if the title would actually be the name of the movie. So you take this and you bind it to be the title of the movie. Okay, and then you can say this one would be the details. This one can be, for example, the overview, right? So let's call this one overview, like that. It's just working with properties, but at the end of the day, again, pure HTML that you can go here and edit also by hand. So we showed you basically, now we have basically our application ready, right? We can go over here, pick up a movie, click on the movie and get information about the movie over here and see it running like that. Now, so far I worked with my own business object, but sometimes your data is in an external system and you need to get this data. And when you need to access an external system, this is where you're going to work with services. Okay, so I'm going to create a service connection here. And again, we have our service catalog accessing Oracle, ERP, HCM, CX, SCM, okay, accessing Oracle Integration Cloud, accessing a bunch of other backends if you want to. You can use your OpenAPI Swagger specs, okay? Or you can define by endpoint, which is what I'm going to do here. I have an endpoint to the movie database, which gets me information about movies, okay? Actually, that's not the endpoint I wanted to use. Rather than that, I want to use this endpoint. Okay, so this endpoint gets me information about who worked on the movie, the credits, okay? And it has a parameter, a movie ID. So I'm going to create a connection to this server, which we call a backend, call it movies. Again, different types of authentications that you can use here to access your backends, auth authentication, basic authentication, passing the Oracle Cloud and stuff like that. You give a name to the service. So we'll call this the cast service. And then you can set properties. So there's a movie ID. Okay, we can set a default value for this movie ID. Copy this. There's a parameter that you need to pass in. In our case, it's the API key. I'm going to copy this one as well, paste it here. And then, just like you would do in tools like Postman or things like that, you can actually test the REST service. So you issue a request, you see the response. If you like the response, you're going to save this as an example response for VB to know this is what this REST service returns. And you click create. And from this point on, you can use the data from this REST service in your application. Okay. So what we're going to do here is, for example, let's look at our page right now. It has those summarizing fold-out layouts. So let's pick up another fold-out panel, and we can add it, for example, here to be the first one. And this would be the cast. Okay. Sorry, not this one. It's the properties. It's this one, title, cast. Okay. And now I can, just like I did with my business objects here, if I now click refresh, I also have connection to my services. And I have my cast service endpoint, and I can drag and drop it into my page, drop it as a list, pick up the template for my list, and pick up the name of the actor as the default slot, and the character they play as the secondary slot. Okay. There's a parameter here, which is the movie ID, which for us is in this field. So this is how you do parameter mapping. Okay, and again, when you're doing it like this, you eliminate situation where you miss drag and drop stuff or you mistype things. Okay, so let's see if this works right now. Okay, if we click on Oppenheimer, yeah, we get the full list of who plays who in this movie. Okay. At this stage, you can come over here, click run, and you have your application ready for people to use, or basically ready for you to test. Okay. You can do a search. Okay. Pick up the Transformer movie, click on it, get the information about the cast from an external system, read the overview, read the ratings, information, and then navigate back to the parent page. So I spent about 10 minutes building this little application. If you look at the development experience so far, it was done all through drag and drop, setting properties, working with dialogues and things like that. But at the end of the day, you do get code here that you can also directly modify if you need to. Okay, I'm going to do one more thing, which is to show you that I can go over to my application here and go into the settings. And I'm going to check the security. Okay, we allow everyone to access the application. I'm going to enable progressive web app. Okay. This, for example, allows me to have this application run on a device as a built-in application on the device. I'm going to go into my application setting over here to, again, my business object, and I'm going to allow anyone to access my business object. I'm actually going to have a little also part here in my business object to allow any anonymous user to view and update my movies. And then I can also go over here and I can do a stage. Stage is the first part of the life cycle of an application. And what I'm doing here is I'm actually creating a test environment for anyone to test my application. And by anyone, by the way, I also mean you watching this webinar right now, okay? If I now go back to my homepage, my application is now staged. I can click on it. And if you'll access this URL from your computer, you'll be able to run this application. I'm going to make it easier for you. I'm going to show you a QR code, okay? Take your phone, your mobile phone, scan this QR code. This would open the application on your device, and you'll be able to access the application and work with it. So in those 10 minutes, not only did I build the application, because I'm using Visual Builder, it's also very easy for me to now host the application and allow all of you out there in the internet world to access this application and look up information about those movies, okay? So that was our quick demo of the development experience and hosting experience with Visual Builder. Let's go back to the slides and cover some of the more advanced capabilities of Visual Builder. Okay. So some more things to know. First of all, there are other features that we didn't have time to demo. For example, the progressive web app and the ability to package your application as a mobile distribution, basically, where people can install the application on their device directly from the browser and access it from outside the browser through an icon on their device. We can even create offline applications if needed. The whole aspects of roles and security and defining different roles in your application and who is allowed to do what is also done in a declarative way. Managing of the life cycle of doing development stage or test and going live and then doing versions also built into the platform. Beyond creating the web interface, we can also create Excel interfaces to your REST services. We have what we call the Excel add-in to Visual Builder, or Visual Builder add-in for Excel, allowing you to take and create a REST interface that fetches data from from REST, and also update data on REST and do things like that. We didn't cover the full integration we have with other Oracle Cloud services, okay? We did mention that the integrations from Oracle Integration are shown in the service catalog. We also work with Oracle Analytics. They have UI components that you can drag and drop into the page to show analytics canvases and reports and stuff like that. We work with the Oracle Process Automation. We work with the content and experience. Again, they have UI components that you can drag and drop into the page to access your content repository and browse it and search it. And we also work with, for example, Intelligent Advisor, which is kind of a survey type of thing and step-by-step thing. Again, a lot of capabilities inside Oracle in other products are built as UI components that you can just drag and drop and place inside the Visual Builder application. And again, at the end, you get a scalable hosting platform where you can actually control how many OCPUs are serving your application, depending on the growth of your application and user base. Now, one of the things that is unique to Visual Builder and that Visual Builder is very focused on is being enterprise ready. So what you saw me do is basically looks like a very easy, and it is very easy, development approach of a small application. But Visual Builder wasn't built just for building small application. In fact, we are using it to build our enterprise application, what drives a lot of revenue for Oracle, our cloud application. And there are specific features and architecture built into Visual Builder that aims at those professional developers. When you go beyond just the drag and drop, what professional developers are looking for. One of the areas is focus on reusability and extendability and modularity. When you're developing an application in Visual Builder, you can create reusable components, modular implementations. And this range everywhere from creating a web component, just a UI component that you can add to an application. And again, we have 150 components. You can add your own web component. To creating more complex page fragments. So areas on the page that have UI, as well as business logic, as well as connection to data that are reusable, so that you can take and then reuse in other places, in other pages. Okay? So you can create web components, you can create page fragments. Page fragments can also act as templates for pages. So you create a fragment with areas that people can drop data into or their own UI into. Okay? We can create a full page template. We can also create application templates, so templates for a full application. We can create declarative actions that you can drag and drop into our business action chain, business logic action chain. We create reusable business objects. So again, every business object that you create can be reused in other applications as well. And we actually have a component exchange that allow you to publish and pick up components that you and others have developed. Okay. So by having this approach of building modular reusable components, we allow bigger team to break down the work so each developer can work on a section of a page or on a section of an application without colliding with other developers' work, and then assemble those components into a single application. Okay, and that's how we manage, for example, development in big development team inside Oracle. Now, the other thing about the platform, as you saw, we're using regular HTML, we're using regular JavaScript, we're using regular REST. So we have a lot of functionality inside Visual Builder, but if we're missing something, you can extend the platform. You can bring in web components from the outside world. You can bring in third-party JavaScript libraries that do some complex things and use them in your application. Hey, you need to generate a PDF. You need to do some complex calculation. There are JavaScript for all of those. You can just bring them in and use them inside Visual Builder. And of course, you can access any REST service out there in the world to get data. So that was one aspect, the concept of modularity and reusability. The other thing is that when a developer works, okay, modern development technique usually use a bunch of tools around the development environment. Okay. First of all, you use Git. Okay, you use source management. As you saw, everything that you create in Visual Builder is actually source that you can go read, access, and understand. It's HTML, it's JavaScript, it's the same de facto standard languages that everyone uses out there. With Visual Builder, we also have an environment called Visual Builder Studio. And Visual Builder Studio gives you a platform that integrates agile collaborative development aspect with source control version management and continuous integration and delivery automation. Okay. All deeply integrated with Visual Builder. Okay. So it starts from managing your team and your project. We have a issue tracking system. Okay, so you can basically track all the items you have on your to-do, all the bugs that you're fixing, all the features that you're building. You can prioritize them. You can assign them to people. You can estimate how long they're going to take. You can create relationships between them, so have sub-tasks and stuff like that. And then we have agile dashboards, Scrum, Kanban dashboards that allow you to manage your development sprints. Okay. We have Wiki for collaboration. We have code review functionality that allows people to review the code of other people, give them comments, have a full discussion on this. All the code is inside Git repositories in the cloud, private Git repositories. And it's all automated with a CI/CD system that allows you to then take and automate this process of when someone did a code change, I take it, I compile it, I do checks on it, and then I deploy it, okay, across instances. This is what we call Visual Builder Studio, and it sits on top of Visual Builder, allowing you basically to deploy into the Visual Builder runtime, but do all the development in this extensive environment. Okay? And this gives you the ability to do modern development methodologies and apply modern development methodologies when you're building with Visual Builder. It gives you Git version management with deep integration, things like the ability to do diffs across files, do rollbacks, compare version, do cherry picks, do stash, all the Git commands that you're familiar with, including visual conflict resolution. If two developers modify the same file at the same time for some reason, we can visually show you the changes each did, and you can pick up the ones that are correct or merge them together. We do CI/CD automation with pipelines. That's what you're seeing down here on the right side. Okay, taking your code, running, for example, audits on the code, running automated tests, and then doing deployment. In Visual Builder, we support test-driven development. We can actually, for the business logic that you created, those action chains, those code blocks, we can generate tests that actually run as part of your development process. And when you change your code, we'll automatically run the test and verify that your code is not broken. Your code is pure HTML and JavaScript, which means if you need to debug your code, you're using regular browser development tools. Okay, you can set breakpoints in your JavaScript and inspect variables and change their values and basically do normal development like any other web developer out there. We have code auditing. As you develop, we review your code based on our rules. We make sure that your code complies to the rules. If you have unused variables, we'll highlight them. If you have, again, syntax error, of course, we'll highlight them. If you're building something that doesn't meet accessibility needs, we can help you fix those type of things. A lot of audit rules are built into the platform and automatically executed on your code, okay, to help you create better code. We have this concept of deployment profile, allowing you to take the same code, deploy it to different platforms, and each time switch, for example, the backends that they are accessing, the servers that they are accessing. And when you package our application for deployment, we can actually take your application and optimize the code, do things like minimize artifacts and create a better performing web application as part of your deployment process. All of those things are built into Visual Builder Studio that works together with Visual Builder. Another aspect of our support for enterprise developer is the inclusion of the Redwood UI design in Visual Builder and the deep integration we have. You just saw the application and how it's being done. Okay. The idea here is that Redwood is the Oracle next generation user experience. The aim of Redwood is to bring state-of-the-art consumer-grade user experience that works across devices to enterprise application that we build inside Oracle. We use Redwood in Fusion apps. We use it in all our apps going forward. This is how we build UIs. This is our modern design. Okay. We invested a lot of time and a lot of resources, and we're still investing in developing Redwood and enhancing it with every new version, building new templates, new patterns, and new components, okay? And you can use the same best practices that our developers use to create and implement in your application. Okay? When you create a Redwood application, it automatically is responsive and works across devices. It supports aspects like internalization, accessibility, and one very important thing, it creates consistency across your application. Same usage pattern, same look and feel. This makes adopting your application by end users very easy because the way that they interact with the system is going to be the same across all the pages in your application. So Redwood is deeply integrated into Visual Builder. You saw how I can pick up templates, patterns, how I can drag and drop components from the Redwood components into my page. It's all built into Visual Builder already, and you can start using it today. Now, Visual Builder can be used to create any type of application, mostly data-related application, accessing any type of data. But one of the key areas that we're focused on is integration with Fusion Cloud Application. We are the tool that Fusion application are built with. Okay? All the new modules in Fusion applications are being developed with Visual Builder. Again, across everything, whether it's CX, HCM, ERP, SEM, it's all being built with Visual Builder. We have hundreds of developers inside Oracle using Visual Builder. Okay. But beyond that, once we deliver the Fusion application to you as a customer, if you look at a page that was created with Visual Builder, as an end user, you would see a menu option that allows you to edit this page in Visual Builder. This is what you can see on the right side. And you can modify the pages that Oracle delivered to adjust to your needs. Do things like hide columns, switch columns around, reorder columns, hide areas based on role, based on values, stuff like that. All of those changes are being done by the end users using Visual Builder. So Visual Builder is also not just the development tool, it's also the tool that is used to configure Fusion apps. In addition, Visual Builder Studio is built into Fusion apps and allows you to create new pages inside Fusion apps that access Fusion apps data and implement the Redwood UI with the same tool I just showed you right now, same Visual Builder development experience. Okay. Every Fusion app customer has access to Visual Builder Studio today to start to create their own pages on top of Fusion apps data using our service catalog. Even if you want to run VB apps outside of Fusion apps, Again, we can do integrated authorization and authentication with the same users and roles that are defined in Fusion App. We have this service catalog that accesses directly the business object. We know how to work with the business object in a smart way. We know how to do query out of the box. We know how to do sorting, pagination, not get all the SAS data into your application, but get it in sets of data, manage relationships, work with metadata about the objects. All of these are things that we know out of the box when we work with Fusion Apps data. And of course, we use the same look and feel with the Redwood template patterns and components. So that was a quick overview of what Visual Builder is. Just to give you a summary of what makes Visual Builder unique. Okay. First of all, it's the technology stack. Okay. Again, when you're comparing to other tools that you might be evaluating. Visual Builder uses the de facto standard in the market today for developers. It's JavaScript, HTML, and REST all the way. That's the actual code that we use. Okay? We don't use proprietary languages. This means that you can pick up any developer from the street and they already know, like the chances that they know JavaScript and HTML are very high. They would be able to work with Visual Builder. They would just become more productive. Okay. Second aspect is that we're truly visual development. You actually see the data. You actually see the page. You can actually modify the location of specific items exactly to where you want them. And it's not just on UI that we do visual development. We also do it on your business logic. When you're creating the if then else, when you're creating the loops, when you're accessing REST services, it's all visual. Okay? It translates to code, but it's visual development. We are a white box tool. So we don't just generate code that you don't understand and you can't access and modify. We help you create code that you can actually modify, directly access, and change the way you want it. You saw we create HTML, we create JavaScript, and you can directly modify the code in there, and the code would make sense. It's not some hokey pokey magic that is happening behind the scene. It's the actual code of your application. Next aspect is the support for modern development methodology. Deep integration with Git, deep integration with CI/CD tooling, the whole Visual Builder Studio platform that is built to help you manage a big development team working on big projects. Okay. Next point is integration with Oracle Fusion application. Again, the tool for development, the tool for customization, and the tool that allows you to add new pages directly inside Fusion apps, not as an iframe from the outside, but rather as a page inside Fusion apps. Okay. All the Redwood components that are built into our product, having basically all the experience and best practices that we use for our UI design at your disposal. And the fact that it's a managed service. It's not something that you need to take and install and manage and update and backup and upgrade. We do all of this for you. Okay. That's one of the reasons that this tool is what we use for our own enterprise application. Okay. When we build Fusion apps, we build them with Visual Builder. If we trust Visual Builder to build our enterprise application, you can probably do the same for your applications. All right, so if you want to learn more, okay? So one of the key new things that we just released right now is that the ability to work with the design environment and create your pages and access REST services, okay? This is all now free to any customer that has Oracle Cloud credits, okay? If you have Oracle Cloud credits, you can spin up an instance of Visual Builder Studio in your cloud instance. This is a free entitlement that you get as an Oracle Cloud customer. And from there, you can create the same type of user interfaces I just created directly from there, preview them and see how they work. It's all free in there. What you don't get is you don't get the hosting platform to host your application. That's something that involves a license. But if you want to experiment with Visual Builder, that's the great way to start. Okay? If you go to docs.oracle.com, you will find a bunch of tutorials and all our documentation and books and guides that help you get started and develop your expertise building applications with Visual Builder. If you run into any questions, we have our Cloud Customer Connect technical forum, okay, for Visual Builder, where you can ask any technical questions, any how-to, and all the community is there to help you. A bunch of Oracle product managers and a bunch of other people from the community are sharing their experience and helping each other over on this forum. Of course, there's always Oracle support as well. If you have like serious issues, you can just open tickets with Oracle support and they'll help you as well. We have our blogs on blogs.oracle.com/VBCS. On our blog, we have, again, a lot of how-tos, videos, tutorials, insight into how the product works, coverage of new features. All of this is on our blog. And if you're on LinkedIn, we have a LinkedIn group called the Oracle Visual Builder Group. You can just search it on LinkedIn, where, again, all the community is sharing information, people posting about the blogs and the how-tos that they wrote, questions, answers, job posts, and all the information about any upcoming events and new blogs are always up there for you to get updated. So that's about it for what we wanted to cover today. Thank you for attending. I'm going to see if there are any open questions that we want to handle on the Q&A.
Shai, I have two questions I wanted to raise to you. One is from Joe. Is it possible to hide in the, I think what he's saying in the Navigator tools, the network calls or the JavaScript in, like, I think what he's meaning in the Google developer tools type
No,
thing?
that's the way that web application works. You can always see the data on the client side when it got there. After all, you want to show it also on the page. What is important to understand is that all the communication between the browser and the server is encrypted. Everything is going over HTTPS, everything is secured. Once the data is on your client can actually see it. That's the same way if you access any other website, you would be able to see the same information over there.
Okay, thank you, because that's what I said, but I just thought
all right. I'll handle a few other questions that I can see open there about theming in Fusion application. Fusion application have the Redwood UI. This is the UI that they want to stick with. Right now, they don't allow you to modify the theme, but this is something on the roadmap. They are going to add the ability to modify some coloring. Right now, they are very strict about the UI and the coloring that is enforced there. Bulk uploading issues into Visual Builder Studio. We actually have a REST API that allows you to work with the issue tracking system in Visual Builder Studio, and you can use that REST API to upload data in bulk over there. Is there a roadmap for having custom object to be used in Visual Builder Studio? Yeah, we are constantly creating custom objects and putting them on the component exchange over there. You can also add your own custom object into your own component exchange. We explain it in our documentation how to spin your own. What about application that requires SQL to shape data? You can use SQL to access your data and expose it, for example, using ORDS as a mechanism to access the data. And Visual Builder knows how to work, for example, with the open API spec that ORDS exposes and access the data directly through ORDS. So that's basically, if you want full SQL capabilities accessing an Oracle database, that's the best way to do it. That's why ORDS is out there and we know how to use that. Let's see if we have anything else. See that our team has been very busy answering a lot of questions during the session. Right, I think that's all we had time for today. Again, if you have any further question, hit us up on our Cloud Customer Connect forum. You can also find me on Twitter. I'll be happy to answer questions over there as well. Thanks everyone for attending today and hope to see you in our next seminars. Have a great day.
Thanks, Shai.